So we're going to be looking at rational numbers. How can we decide which is bigger and how do we order them? So rational numbers are any number that can be written as a fraction. So if it's written as a fraction already, like 3/5, it's a fraction. But we could also write its decimal equivalent, which is 3 divided by 5, which is 0.6. We could write the percent equivalent, which is 60%. So any number that can be written as a fraction. So 27 hundredths, and that is 27%. These are all rational numbers, different forms of them, but rational numbers. This is 12 over 100 because it's percent, and percent's always out of 100. And then in decimal form, you're going to divide by 100, and you're going to get, 0.12. 16 can be written as a fraction, even though it's a whole number. It's 16 over 1. And in decimal form, it's 16, and it's 1600%. That's a big percent. Some fractions, like this one, 1 and 1/7, it's going to end up being a really messy, long number. But after a while, it repeats. So 1/7 looks like this. So 1 and 1/7 would be 1 point, and then 1 divided by 7 is 0.142857714. That's where it starts to repeat. And rational numbers either have to stop when they're fractions like this, or they have to repeat after a while. When you think about how to decide if one's bigger than the other, it's easier if they're all in the same form. So if you feel comfortable with them all in decimal form, then get them in decimal form. If you feel comfortable and if they're all in percent form, that's fine. Most people not big fans of fractions, but you could also get them so they have the same denominator and make equivalent fractions and see which one's bigger that way. Remember, if you have a fraction, you can divide the numerator by the denominator to get the decimal. And if you have the decimal and you want the percent, you're going to multiply by 100, and that moves the decimal point 2 places to the right. So 1.6 is 160 because the decimal points move 2 places to the right. And if you have the percent, you want the decimal, then you're just going to divide by 100. So here's the decimal point. Dividing by 100 moves the decimal point 2 places to the left. So you need to be able to be pretty successful with changing the forms of the numbers if you're going to compare them. That's a good first step. So if you don't have a lot of flexibility in your mind with comparing decimals with percents and that kind of stuff, then it's just easier to have one strategy, and that one strategy is to get everything in decimal form and then think about money. So the easiest thing to do is just line up your decimals and then think about money. So here in our money system, here is a dollar, right? And here's dimes, or 10 cents, right? Oh, it doesn't work. Well, I'll just call it 10 cents. But it's a tenth, and this is a hundredth. That's a penny. So this is really all we need to look at to decide which is bigger. They both have a dollar, but this one has 80 cents and this one has 20 cents, so this one's bigger. There's other ways of doing it, but you can always take the decimals and line them up. So if we have this and the bottom one is going to be bigger because it has 35 cents and this one only has 2. Okay? So line up your decimals and think about money. What about the number line? A lot of you were having problems with the number line, and so the number line has to do with tenths. This particular one is broken down into tenths, and so there's a couple ways of writing those tenths. You can write them as fractions. Here's 1/10, here's 2/10, 3/10, 4/10. I got ahead of myself there. 5/10, which is the same thing as 1/2. 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and 10/10, which works out to be 1. So it's broken down in tenths, and I wrote it with the fraction form, but we can also think about this in terms of tenths written in decimal form, and that would be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, which is equal to 1/2, and 5/10, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and 1.0, which is 1, which is 100%. The last way we can look at this on the number line is then going to be in the percent. So we have 10%, 20%, 30%. I'm going to stop writing percent because it's getting messy. 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, and 100%. So once you have that figured out on the number line, then you can start placing things where they belong. So we're going to go to a clean number. And I'm just going to write the tenths down because that seems to be a helpful thing. And so once you've got the tenths written down, then you can begin to compare things a little more carefully. And this is 1.0, which is the same thing as 1, which is the same thing once again as 100%. So let's check some numbers out and see what you think. If I have 0.023, what is that? Well, let's compare it to like 0.1, which is the same thing as 0.100. Now, which one's bigger? Let's look at the money. Here we are looking at the money, and I'm just going to erase this for a second. Which one's bigger? The 0.10. So the 0.023, which is our original problem, has to go before 0.10. So here's 0.023. So compare it. How about if we have 14%? Well, we can think about it in terms of percent, but if you want to put it in decimal form, that's going to be 0.14. And then let's look. Here in between 0.1 and 0.2 is 0.14, because here we've got 0.1 and 0.2. Go ahead and add a place marker of 0 there. 0.14 is going to be in between those, a little closer to, so that's 14%. So you can go ahead and continue that process with all sorts of different things. So if we had 0.82, it's going to be a little after 0.80, which is right there. So you can go ahead and, it's just probably easier if you don't have a lot of flexibility here to change everything to decimal form and then put it on this line. So I'm going to put some numbers down, and then I'm going to stop talking and let you pause it and put them where they belong, and then I'll put them where they belong, okay? Okay, so remember, I'm just gonna go ahead and put my tenths there. This is 5/10, 2/10, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and 1.0. So 5/6 is 5 divided by 6, which works out to be 0.83 with a repeater. So where is 0.8? 0.8, 0.8, here it is. 0.83 will be somewhere in between 0.8 and 0.9. So here is 5/6. 22% is the same thing as 0.22. So where does that belong? It belongs in between 0.2 and 0.3, closer to 0.2, because this is like 0.25 would be directly in between them. 6/10, 6 divided by 10 is 0.6. Oh, sure enough, here's 6/10. And 0.001 is really small. It's really close to 0. So you're going to go ahead and put it really close to 0. So you keep practicing with those. Go back to the last packet, practice, practice, practice. I'm sure you can find something online where you can practice as well.